Hi, this is Jules Sandison for FionaDobson.com, and today I'm talking about from cross-dressing to transition. There's a moment when one realizes that simply wearing feminine clothing is more than just a fetish. It starts to feel so natural there's something other than just a little sexual playfulness going on. I'd be the first to admit this can be very confusing. Perhaps you've been feeling a little guilty that this whole thing feels so right. Likely it's something that's been suppressed for a long time, and each time it emerges, it does so with feelings of both excitement and awkwardness. And yet, it just won't go away. Anyone who's experienced this will know precisely what I mean. Eventually you have to ask yourself, is there something more to this? Just perhaps there are incidents in the past that make sense of all this apparent foolishness. I'm not suggesting something happened in childhood. I don't believe for an instant that being transgender is some sort of response to trauma. Quite the reverse. No, in the past it's far more nebulous clues that point us in the right direction. I always felt something wasn't quite right, but couldn't really define it. Only when I did certain things did I find myself saying, yes, this feels right. And it's in those moments that the true sense of who we are seems to emerge. And for many of us, we push those feelings down. We hide them guiltily and try to deny them in that internal dialogue we all have. And in doing so, we close off a part of ourselves. Some of us, myself included, compensate by trying to show how manly we can be. I've seen this in others, but recognize it in myself too. I spent much of my young adult life trying to demonstrate what a man I was. I suspect I was doing this to impress my own father, for what that's worth. You can imagine how well that turned out. Perhaps he could see something in me that I had yet to recognize myself. And of course, judged by those very conservative eyes, you can imagine how well that went. But to continue, eventually there comes a moment when you realize this isn't something you're choosing. It's something deep within you. What you do with this knowledge is the tricky part. Many of us continue to suppress it. We choose never to emerge as our true selves, never allowing ourselves to grow from that moment of realization. Personally, I suspect that's where a lot of depression originates. Others follow a more androgynous path, and depending on our social situation, this might be enough. God knows there are some places on this beautiful planet where revealing yourself as trans can result in threats to life and limb, or worse, much worse. But there are those of us for whom androgyny simply isn't enough. You may have heard the phrase, being transgender is not a choice. Well, this is what that becomes crushingly evident. And that's when we realize this is something which, if we really want to lead a full and meaningful life, we've no choice about and have to accept. For a moment, whether you're cis, emerging as trans, or you know someone who's trans, just try and imagine how frightening that moment must be. You realize the person you've been struggling to be really isn't who you are. The term identity crisis isn't even close. This is devastating. You question how you've perceived the world, realizing we genderize everything from ambitions to societal roles to relationships, and for the first time you see why things didn't really work so well. Or perhaps it suddenly makes sense why some parts of your life have flourished. Either way, the world seems a very different place. This is an experience that forces us to question everything, and some of the answers can feel at odds with the beliefs we've lived with most of our lives. This all sounds rather dour. However, there is something of a happy ending. Once we accept ourselves for who we really are, we begin to see life rather differently. We start to find joy in things previously denied to us, usually through societal convention. This can be as simple as wearing nice clothes to doing things which were previously assumed to be feminine. If we're lucky enough to have an LGBTQ community around us, we start to realize we're not alone, and there are others who've navigated this path before. If we've friends who are supportive, we begin to emerge into a far richer life, a life most people take for granted, not realizing that those of us who are transgender have been denied even this simplest of pleasures. Finally, the egg cracks and life begins. This is Jules Sandison for FionaDobson.com. Be sure to subscribe and follow the channel or wherever you find this.